creations of an artist are but reflections of the handiwork of creation itself. An artist taps into the subtle life force of the soul at the heart of the cosmos. When we open our minds and hearts, we see all our activities are the moments that weave the fabric of the eternal. And when we have spent all the moments allowed us, our creations continue into the future, that those coming yet unborn generations may be enriched. There is art in the memory of a remarkable sunset, or the beauty of our household pets. The grandeur of our planet is a gallery of art unmatched by the hand of man. An artist sees glimpses of insight or beauty, and often both, in all the things that surround us. An artist by nature seeks those glimpses and feels joy whenever they occur. Sometimes things that are everyday can be shown for their beauty or express the nature of being human. There is art in our experience of the ordinary. All of us has that ability if we but look with an open heart. There is art in how we see ourselves. Our faces, old, young, man, woman, our greatness, our struggles, and the undeniably beautiful human body. There is art in the way we see the one we love most. A simple photograph often becomes a visual poem of our affection. There is art that reveals the divine. There is art in our architecture. There is art painstakingly and brilliantly created. there is art of the whimsical. There is art in selecting art. There is art in transformative images. There is art in the creation of art. There is art that honors the performing arts. In Misha's own words, the Expression Award is a symbol of the eternal flame of Jewish daring and creativity. It gives me pride to see a talented film creator hold in his hands the award created by my hands. In this new work, Swan Lake in Bronze, these expressions of art have found a music-like harmony in a single bronze statue of adulation to a magnificent ballet, and more, the creative spirit itself. In the stream of random events that make up our lives, and in the connections we make, one person to another, there may be spoken or unspoken promises between friends that were not able to be fulfilled. However, life may surprise us with a second chance for a missed promise to flower, and among the greatest joys that life has to offer is a promise fulfilled. It was in September of the year 2011. San Francisco artist Misha Fried and his wife Galina vacationed aboard an ocean cruise to the land of their birth, so as to visit again those places that held meaning and delight from their younger days. Perhaps more than any other place in Russia, they were drawn to the city of St. Petersburg. Their living in San Francisco had reminded them of the beauty and the cultural treasures of the city of St. Petersburg. They found Petersburg in high energy, celebrating its rich legacy of music, dance, and art. Petersburg was full of life, devoted to restoring the city to its original grandeur that was envisioned by Tsar Peter the Great. In Petersburg, music and ballet is the obsession of everyone, from the poor to the important. Ask a little old lady in the park with a shopping bag. She will know the schedule of performances. Ask a young person on a motorcycle, and he will tell of his favorite dancer. A policeman patrolling traffic has his own favorite moments from last week's performance. Sightseeing in St. Petersburg is pure delight. Breathtaking palaces, Peter's Square, the Hermitage, epic monuments, buildings after buildings, each one magnificent in its own way. The mighty Neva River and the charming canals spanned by bridges, each one different from the next. The Peter Church and the Church of the Spilled Blood, each an astonishing gallery of unparalleled Russian Orthodox Christian art. Petersburg is a city shaped by its harsh weather, such that sightseeing indoors is equally pure delight. The weather of that autumn of 2011 had been poor, and thus Misha and Galina sought indoor entertainment. They found tickets were available to see a performance of Swan Lake at the Venerable Conservatory of Music and Ballet. Swan Lake is perhaps the most loved, the most often performed ballet of all time. Misha's childhood experiences of his father taking him to the ballet created in him a lasting love for its beauty. On the evening of the performance, Misha and Galina were surprised during an intermission to see a familiar face approaching them, director of the conservatory's ballet company, Oleg Vinogradov. 20 years earlier in Toronto, Canada, Misha and Galina had attended a performance of Prokofiev's Romeo and Juliet by the Kirov Ballet. There they had met the virtuoso cellist Rostropovich and dancers Mikhail Baryshnikov and Faruk Ruzimatov and ballet director Oleg, who had brought the dance troupe to the Americas. Misha and Oleg shared love of the ballet and art and began sharing ideas for new collaborations in the time-honored tradition of art, music, and ballet working magic together. Before long, they knew they had become endearing friends.
Значит, и еще, значит, вот сейчас делается фильм, то есть он почти готов. Этот фильм чисто коммерческий фильм, видео, где я, значит, своими силами взял двух мальчика и девочку, и они, значит, переходят с одной позы в другую, и это фильм моих скульптур. Это видео практически уже готово.
However, they were soon separated by thousands of miles in a period of time before instant messaging and emails. The next step together would have to wait nearly 20 years. This accidental reunion with an old friend indeed reawakened a dream they shared from another time, another place, that their artistic creations should someday, somehow, be joined together. When Misha told Oleg of his recent art gallery showing in San Francisco, Oleg told him that the conservatory would be celebrating its 150th year in 2012 and suggested Misha could have a showing at the conservatory as part of the celebration. It was at that moment Misha saw an even greater opportunity and envisioned creating an original sculpture in bronze to be donated to the school. The conservatory has a population of statues of great musical composers, Rubinstein, Borodin, and Tchaikovsky. And the walls outside the auditorium are an art gallery for paintings with themes drawn from music, ballet, and Petersburg itself, with styles ranging from classical to impressionist to modern. Mischa's vision of a sculpture would bridge the gap between the marble statues of composers and the images rendered in paint. The sculpture would capture the moment of transformation from swan to woman, not in marble nor paint, but rendered in bronze, and will become a unique addition to the gallery. Oleg immediately saw the sense and wonder of Mischa's offer and suggested a prominent showplace. Mischa set to work to create a sculpture that could capture the spirit of the conservatory, a task made easier in that San Francisco is a cultural sister city to St. Petersburg, just as Mischa is an artistic brother to Oleg. By day and by night, like Petersburg, San Francisco breathes the air of the sea, nurtures all of the arts. The symphony, the opera, the ballet are central to life in San Francisco, with conservatories and art galleries devoted to developing new talents. It celebrates the marvels of inspiration brought to it from many lands. Like Petersburg, it is a city of world-class beauty that treasures its arts and enhances it with structures that are works of art in themselves. The Golden Gate Bridge is an engineering marvel. It was given its final Art Deco appearance by local architect Irving Morrow. In Morrow's own words, "The narrow strait is caressed by breezes from the blue bay throughout the long golden afternoon. But perhaps it is loveliest at the cool end of the day, when for a few breathless moments, faint afterglows transfigure the gray line of hills." San Francisco's Palace of Fine Arts was originally constructed as part of the Panama Pacific Exposition in 1915. Its lagoon is the permanent home to a flock of swans, and watching them glide across the water reminds us of the grace of a dancer. The inspiration for the music and ballet of Swan Lake is a natural comparison of the elegance, beauty, and graceful movements of a ballet dancer and a swan. Tchaikovsky's creation is a sublime expression of that comparison. Thus, the natural artistic expression would be the transformation of swan and dancer through the magic of music and the artisanship of sculpting in bronze. artist now becomes the dancing partner to the swan, as he choreographs the work of assistants in the manner of an orchestra conductor with musicians. The quiet meditation of a sketch guides fingers caressing clay, then gives way to the fire and thunder of the foundry, where skilled hands can form the molten bronze metal to the shape begun in the artist's mind.
To show you an example of how we do the gating system, and that's how we're going to deliver the bronze to the piece. So you've got everything here is in wax, and this will all become bronze. So we're going to basically make a fireproof coating around this wax. When that fireproof coating, called a ceramic shell, is thick enough, we melt the wax out, and then we pour the bronze in its place where the wax used to be. So in effect, we're pouring bronze in this cup, we'll flow down this main screw bar, out into the piece through these screws, and fill up the bronze figure from the bottom to the top. These vents will allow the air and gases to escape out the top. This all becomes bronze. After it's cool, they're going to cut off all these screws, they're called, and you'll still have little areas that have to be filled in with the patches that were cut out previously. Once the weld is done, they got to sand the weld down and make it all smooth and replace the original texture until it looks just like the original. As you can see there, it's got a lot of detail and all the hair detail is there. And it should come out. We want the wax to be as good as possible because that's how the bronze is going to come out. It's going to come out exactly like the wax. So this stage, you have to be very careful, very delicate.
metal solidifies within the mold, it needs to be released like a butterfly from a chrysalis, but only brute force can set it free. The hands of the metalworker, grinding, welding, polishing, releases the beauty of the metallic form and perfects its every detail the artist first created in clay.
Yeah, the casting came out really nice.
No bubble. We're both like. You did one mistake. I don't know why. It was that angle. It was a better way to more.
What I'll do is I'll get everything to an 80, and then when I go to the 180, I'll be doing 180 on the bottom, and I'll just barely touch that.
Very little, yes,
That's
180.
all.
Okay, so this is too rough.
Yeah.
This is probably 80. This is 80. I know. Okay, no.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm in a good camp.
You're in good hands.
But I tell you anything.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine.
It's better we will fear than we make mistakes.
by doing that, then we don't have to plug all the piece. I think what we're gonna do then, we're gonna put a pin in the foot. And then what we'll do is we'll drill a hole through this chunk right here. And we'll weld the pin from the bottom and from the top, and then we'll chase back the top.
Just
So
a
that-
second. It's not much space actually. Not much space for pin. Another idea, if you drill about like that and put pin, hammer it, it will hold anyway. The whole idea is not necessary to make very strong because this part is just holding. I'm just the left
Well-
word, left job. Okay, let's put together. We're talking about not holding. Okay, we will eventually come to solution. I think very put in here, weld it very, even just weld it little bit just to cover. And we will make a hole up to here, weld it in here, and just put it in the pin.
How old am I? 29.
Oh, you don't know.
Yeah, young.
You're young man. You're like my youngest son. I have 3 boys. 3 boys. You're the youngest.
The scope of Mish's vision envisioned the creation of Swan Lake in bronze as a performance in moving images, just as Tchaikovsky envisioned performance of his musical creation on the stage of the Ballet Theatre.
Now is the last and the most beautiful process to make a patina of this piece. It's a special chemical formula. It takes little time, but after the patina, the sculpture is really alive. Now it's like a man without skin. So you just see the clear bronze color, but patina makes this completely excellent change of this piece. So this process is going to be soon.
We've got to light for that F1 on the left.
This one.
Yeah. And then that one has liver on it, and then we have E5. And
This
that
is
one's a
this
little
is
bit
not what I'm talking about.
That's
You
not
see, this is
finished
a-
quite as much
yeah.
as yours, so it's not as shiny to start with.
Ferric will go a little bit through. So that's why I show you this. This is too much. But you understand what I'm thinking about. Just only one color is boring. Usually what I do, I brought my pigment. I don't know if you I just put a little bit pigments here and I just touch little pigment with ferric. The color is supposed to be like this. We will see. We will see. We make nice color. All the time colors look different. Sometimes I put a few drops or a couple of rays. A little bit better ferric. I have a recipe of my ferric. I know you know more than me, but maybe you need my knowledge.
Yeah.
If you tell me you don't, tell me stop it. Yeah, okay. Okay, so my idea is not to make ferric like that. This is the scheme. And few of them I did patina myself. So that's why I tell you. See, this is the new. I changed the base now. So that's my style of my patina. This is just I show you not I want exactly, but what I like to put underneath maybe ferric and little copper, and then to build bismuth. Probably you use bismuth for that. More bismuth liner, less bismuth, citric, yes?
Yeah.
So we will see.
Okay.
We will see. In my experience, I usually take this and water.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that.
Same thing. Now I'm going to quiet. That's it. I understand it just water. That's a magic now. That's a magic now. He is a magician. But when I tell you my recipe, you know this by heart right away.
I work on some stuff.
You do something? Yeah?
Not very much.
Not much. The ferric go in, but whatever outside, when you wash it and clean it, the ferric stay strong.
Never done it before.
No,
but
so
we
I
can
always
do it if
stood,
you want.
I always student myself, always, all my life. I always study from people. So if you don't want to do it, no problem. That's how I do it. No problem. Wow. But that's good. That's exactly what I need. So far, so good.
What else do you want to do?
I think nothing. I think you did a great job. And color is good, everything's fine. Everything's just fine.
Painted in flames, the patina gives character and life to the once monotonal metal. The work is complete. The beauty is now manifest. The art pleases the artist and all who see it. The sculpture, now christened Swan Lake in bronze, was ready to leave its city of birth to be transported to its home in St. Petersburg. Petersburg, like San Francisco, is a city of history and elegance. 73 years before the founding of San Francisco, it was created by Tsar Peter the Great to be the imperial city of Russia, a home to all its nobility and the cultural heart of a great country. Petersburg was built at the mouth of the Great Neva River, where it flows into the Baltic Sea. There, Peter built a fortress to project its naval power and allow Russian ships free passage to the Atlantic Ocean. In the same way, San Francisco's naval installations projected American power throughout the Pacific. Russian culture flowered in St. Petersburg, but none so grandly as its music and ballet. The Mariinsky Theater, the Vaganova School of Ballet, and the Petersburg Conservatory of Music. Both cities are shaped by water and numerous parks. Petersburg added a system of canals to provide both transportation and charm to the great houses built on their embankments. Over 400 bridges cross the rivers and canals, each a unique design. Some for traffic, some for pedestrians. This amazing city was the destination for the expedition to take the sculpture to be placed in a site of honor above the grand staircase in the conservatory's vaulted entryway. Mark and Lisa Ames, the owners of the Art Meets Architecture Gallery in Los Angeles, had sponsored a showing of Misha's art in San Francisco the year before at their 1000 Van Ness Gallery. I had met all four at that time when asked to create a film documenting the artwork and the opening reception. Soon we were all friends, and now we were all traveling companions to Petersburg. The task of organizing required a sharp mind and a determination to overcome bureaucratic obstacles, a task well suited to Galina. Her charm and logic persuaded the Russian embassy in San Francisco to provide a diplomatic instrument that proved powerful in opening doors and gaining cooperation from the moment of our entering Petersburg to our departure. Misha, Galina, and I took Lufthansa Airlines from San Francisco and met Mark and Lisa, who had flown in from Los Angeles. From there, we all traveled together to St. Petersburg. We had expected difficulties in moving through Russian customs, especially with the sculpture and other artwork. But Galina's preparations with the Russian embassy proved successful. We were met at the airport by a young man named Vlad, a representative of the conservatory, and we headed into the city. Our first glimpses of Petersburg were enticing, and we were eager to be tourists. There were signs everywhere of a city being restored to its former glory and beauty. However, first the sculpture must be delivered to the conservatory.
Он нам очень все это облегчил жизнь.
А вот такие, видите, как у вас люди работают. Всякие разные. Они одно
А третий играет. Ага, здесь мы оставим.
As the sculpture at last entered its intended home, Oleg was ready to greet us with many helping hands from conservatory workers.
Она будет в воздухе.
Дай руки. Ты же потрясаешь. Это ты все придумал? Ты траблмейкер? Да. Лучше, чем я думал. Она должна лететь.
Конечно. И потом сзади нее все время быть свет. Понимаешь?
Она, между прочим, красивая.
Естественно.
Отсюда ее будут смотреть.
Ее там...
Это замечательно. Потому что у нее нет одного.
Камень. Конечно. Да, конечно.
Галя, пойдем распаковывать эту штуку. Вроде ее из ящика несет.
Не надо. Да, не надо. Она думает, что... Значит, это театр в России. С него начиналась вся музыкальная культура России начиналась в этом доме, на этом месте.
Musical culture started here.
So how old?
All musical culture of Russia
150 лет назад.
started in this
No,
building.
150 lет для building.
Зданию.
Создать.
Да.
150 years old, the building.
Первые оперы, Большой театр России был вот этот театр.
So the whole culture of opera, ballet started right here. Yeah, and then spread in
Да.
other.
Он 2 раза горел.
2 times was fire.
The current building was erected in the 1890s on the site of the old Bolshoi Theater of St. Petersburg and still preserves the grand staircase and landing from that historic theater.
100 years ago they did like you see right now.
The architecture of the new one is
Это святое место. По этим ступенькам ходил Чайковский.
As we climbed the magnificent staircase, Oleg pointed down to our feet and reminded us that Tchaikovsky had walked those same steps. From that moment on, we all felt the awareness of the meaning of where we were. The conservatory was founded in 1862 by the Russian pianist and composer Anton Rubinstein. Rimsky-Korsakov joined the faculty in 1871, and the conservatory has borne his name since 1944. The auditorium interior had been modernized a few years ago, but now there are plans to restore it to its original design. In the lobby outside the auditorium is a wall of names of many prominent and award-winning composers and musicians of the conservatory that had been hastily painted over during the Stalin era, in part because it included many Jewish names of very talented people, many of whom who had immigrated. Removing the paint to reveal the original engravings will require careful work by restorationists.
Did you read that?
I did, yes, that's Swan Lake. Walking out onto the ancient boards of the stage was overwhelming, as we felt the presence of the musical giants who had written and performed on that stage. Everything we saw, touched, and stood upon had a rich history. Composers, musicians, and dancers that we cherished had studied, created, and performed in these places.
See everything. у меня будет выходить.
Прекрасно.
Там очень много рисунков.
Ага.
Я не мог какой тебе дарить, но я думаю, ты продолжаешь любить красивых женщин и
Естественно.
инструменты.
Oleg's office presented a chance for old friends to relax and share laughter.
Ага. Понятно. Да. Спасибо большое. Sit down, please. Ага. Садитесь. Миш, садись туда.
Я
на
тут
стул.
стою. У нас есть вопросы, или ты нам расскажешь, как это все будет выглядеть, или мы спросим тебя.
Ну как, значит, вот за эти 2 дня, которые у нас есть,
This is yours?
да, за эти 2 дня, которые есть, значит, завтра мы везем скульптуру туда, в мастерские, где постамент.
Значит, tomorrow we will take a sculpture to the place when they make the pedestal.
Okay.
Да.
So we will
Значит, там
assemble.
ты делаешь всю механику, которая...
Я все приготовил.
Да.
That's good. That's good. We
Да,
have
причем спектакль этот, он полностью продан International Tourism. Да, вот эти корабли, которые на Неве.
Yes,
громадные.
yes, yes, yes.
Это-
Она место будет?
Ну, конечно.
Значит,
без
whole,
разговора.
whole performance sold out completely.
Да,
Completely
и
sold out.
поэтому аудитория, которая будет на открытии, она будет интернациональной.
After Oleg had laid out the plans for the unveiling and celebration,
Значит,
the
все
conversation
мы,
turned to the meaning of
меня
art
представлю
and its
тебя.
role not only in
Там,
shaping
где слова
politics,
пишут, что ты,
but
что
in
опять и так
transcending
далее.
politics, borders, and ideologies.
Ведь много других скульпторов замечательных, может быть, лучше его или меня, хореографов, людей, которые могли бы делать вот такие акции. Но никто ведь не делает.
Yeah.
Ведь только у него возникла эта мысль будущих поколений, чтобы они воспитывались не на уродстве, не на инсталляциях и на
He's a
перформансах.
dancer. So.
Да. А воспитывались на классике, на
You
традициях.
translate all this.
Да, на традициях именно этого города, этого святого места.
Not many people have an idea to do the donation, to the gift to the future generation.
Right.
It needs energy, not
Yes.
just talent,
Yes,
but
this is a
energy
good man.
and a will to want to do it, to finish it from beginning to the very end, to think of future generation who is going to be raised not on ugliness, but on beauty. So continue to give them, to
Yes.
feed them with the beauty.
And not just to create the piece and to make the sculpture, but to go through the process to make it happen,
Yes,
to
yes.
put it someplace
To put it, yes,
where
to
where
build
many
it,
many
yes,
people
to
can
put
see
it
it.
in.
Everyone has helped me to make this happen. Mark, Lisa, my wife, Wayne, definitely you number one. This is
Да.
you and me.
Да,
You and me
абсолютно.
together.
Это вот как, знаете, совпало 2 половинки.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yin and yang.
Да, абсолютно.
Yeah.
Да, и потом, конечно, это еще и какой-то категория изменения времени. Понимаете, то, что мы сегодня здесь, вы американцы, я американец, имеющий американское гражданство, русский человек, который родился здесь, вырос, стал, так сказать, вот тем он стал. Я сегодня могу жить и там, и здесь. Вы можете приезжать сюда в любое время и делать вот такие акции. Время какое? Ведь еще 30 лет об этом нельзя было даже думать. Понимаете, даже мысли не могло быть, что вот будут такие
That's
акции.
very important. It's just a sign of the time we live now.
И, скажем, вот эта тема, о которой мы сейчас говорим, она будет продолжена сегодня вечером в другой категории эстетики, в живописи, в благотворительности вот этих богатых русских людей сегодня, которые, так сказать, стали, так сказать, вот опорой этого государства, которые вкладывают свои деньги, заработанные в бизнесе, в культуру, а не в войну, не в вооружение.
Right, yes.
Я хочу
And
добавить.
tonight we are going to see people, the continuation of our story. The other people who made their money, but they put it not in the armaments to create
Not
war
the
between
military
people,
forces.
but they do put it back to art in Russia to restore, which was lost 70 years ago.
И, конечно, так сказать, мы никогда не занимались политикой, и политика нас вроде бы не интересует, но именно мы двигаем политику вот такими акциями.
То, что я хочу сейчас сказать, Гала сейчас переведет. Мы с тобой практически одного возраста. Мы с тобой знали сталинизм,
Да. Выросли в нищете.
в нищете.
Абсолютно.
Потом никакой свободы у нас не было.
Никакой.
Но мы только из-под тишка старались оставаться кем мы есть.
Да.
Правильно?
И остались.
И остались. И сейчас у нас свобода. Конечно, уже жалко, что время уходит, но мы сейчас можем делать то, что мы хотим.
Artists like him and Misha and other who make politics, not politics make artists. It's artists who pushes politics into creating more art.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because they lived before at the Stalin time and when it was Iron Curtain, and they continue to be the same. Politics changes, but they, as people, creating and bringing beauty, stay the same throughout.
They not ruin our brain.
Right.
We continue the same with open mind.
Вы понимаете, вот когда после 18-летней блокады холодной войны я привез труппу Мариинского театра в Америку впервые после этого периода, президент Рейган комментировал наш спектакль по национальному телевидению Америки. Понимаете?
Какой год это был?
Это был 86-й год.
Вот сейчас главное переведет.
Да. Вот это, понимаете, то, что когда
Вот
мы
это вот
приехали,
вот
мы
это и
открыли
политика.
глаза американцам, какие мы. Это они же плакали на спектакле «Лебединое озеро». И это вот после этого началось вот это восхождение.
Вот это и есть политика.
Это и есть политика, потому что на наших спектаклях были и все время присутствуют президенты, короли, сенаторы, конгрессмены и так далее, и так далее. И вот на стене висит письмо, личное письмо президента Америки мне. Нормально? Ненормально. Но это показатель времени. И то, что культура может делать вот такие. А сегодня созданная мной Академия в Вашингтоне одна из лучших в мире. Вот что. Или его скульптура будет уже навечно стоять и воспитывать вот этой красотой новое поколение. Вот что.
He said, after 18 years of Cold War, he brought Mariinsky Theater in America.
First time.
First time. And American people saw Russians in art. And Reagan saw it first time. And the wall, the cultural Cold War wall, was broken. And it's cultural exchange something. So this is art which broke
So
the
he is
wall.
not a politician, but he did more politics than anybody else.
Because to this concert, what he does, to this what he brings, politicians come, senators come, and they see how to change the situation. And people come and they start to understand that art has no politics.
Music.
There's no threat.
No threat.
Not to each other. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, you're right.
And what you were saying earlier about that the politicians cannot change the brain, the mind of the artist, and artists, because of the very nature of their process, they're creative people. They are the future. They think of the future. They create the future.
Absolutely.
This is how we learn where we're going from artists.
Yes.
They have the vision.
We have some kind of feeling of what's happened next.
Yes. You feel what's happening now, and you know where it's going, where to go.
Окей, значит, тогда сейчас вы отдыхаете до вечера. Значит, где-то без 15:07 мы встречаемся здесь прямо у входа и пешочком идем.
Значит, Олег, мы тогда возьмем
рядом.
мои эти самые рисунки.
Возьмем.
Эти фотографии только.
Возьмем.
Не Беннерс не надо, только
Нет,
фотографии.
фотографии. Они большие?
Они у меня
Размер вот телевизора.
Очень хорошо.
чуть больше.
То есть мы
Да, прям в машину они помещаются, но просто.
Чудесно.
Значит, что еще? Ну, фильм мы возьмем. Хочешь посмотреть фильм сейчас?
Нет, вечером посмотрим.
Вечером.
Да,
Просто
у меня
перед тем,
сейчас
как увидеть. Ты сейчас занят.
студенты еще.
Окей, хорошо. Все. Значит, все, Олег.
Ладно.
Все.
Ладно.
Все.
We settled into our hotel rooms at the History Hotel, just around the corner from the conservatory on the Canal Griboadova. It was a beautiful old building, well kept and well run by a friendly staff, and the dining room overlooked the canal. With only 5 days before the celebration, everyone set to work. Oleg proved himself to be the benevolent master of his domain. The conservatory staff was competent and dedicated to helping us. They provided suggestions, insight, assistance, and guided the installation through the maze of required permits and approvals.
Не будем мы это делать.
I apologize for discomfort.
The director of the conservatory, Mikhail Guntvard, graciously welcomed us and offered whatever resources were needed to have the sculpture installed on time. Natalia seemed to be constantly busy, bringing us information and asking questions about our needs. She attended to every detail with grace and determination. It could not have happened so well without her professionalism. The sculpture was unpacked and the workmen brought in to prepare the pedestal.
And now we know you're in charge. Thank you.
Давай, приподнять. Они нормально. Нет, шпильки все прямые. Да, да. Правильно, нормально.
Если здесь все будет в порядке, здесь ее и оставим.
Здесь лучше.
Да. Если нет, значит поднимем наверх.
After much discussion, it was positioned at a place of prominence and honor, suited for the unveiling to the invited guest on the night of the celebration and concert.
Стоп! Так, с двух сторон свет.
Да, ну светом она заиграет. Здесь
Потому что я сейчас уберу на самом деле вот эти вот цветочные композиции.
Nikolai, a student of music at the conservatory and the son of a prominent publisher, had designed the invitations and the program booklets, in addition to assisting Natalia in managing the installation process.
Мэридон, Санкт-Петербург. Консерватория.
the #1 television channel in Russia, interviewed Misha during the installation.
«Лебединое озеро в бронзе». Сегодня скульптурное воплощение, пожалуй, самого известного русского балета появится в холле Петербургской консерватории. Свою работу признанный американский художник Миша Фрид преподносит к 150-летию творческого вуза. Мистер Фрид с успехом выставлял свои работы в Париже, Лондоне, Сан-Франциско. Они представлены во многих музеях мира и в частных коллекциях. Теперь одна будет и в Петербурге. Дмитрий Павлов поговорил с автором.
Скульптура в консерватории. Долгая дорога у нее была?
О, долгая дорога. Значит, эта идея возникла приблизительно где-то год назад. И в течение года много надо было делать и нам, и консерватории, чтобы эта скульптура, в конце концов, оказалась здесь.
Это адетта, да?
Это адетта, да. Это даже не то, что адетта, это символ, как я вот его вижу сам, символ балета «Лебединое озеро». Потому что для меня «Лебединое озеро» – это вот превращение из лебедя в балерину, или наоборот, превращение из балерины в лебедя. Я хотел это показать, вот этот процесс в скульптуре.
То есть вот одно крыло, да?
Вот одно крыло, рука, которая переходит в голову лебедя. И вот это вот все, вы когда видите какой-то кусок, вы видите, как будто это птица. В то же время вы видите, что это красивое тело балерины, которое выходит из воды. Это бронза, это очень сложная патина здесь, очень сложная патинировка. Мы 3 раза меняли вот этот цвет, чтобы это выглядело, как будто это акварель. Но это все не акварель, это настоящие химикаты, которые будут жить 1000 лет. И вот она через 1000 лет будет выглядеть точно так же. Я очень горжусь, что эта вещь будет жить вот здесь.
Навещать
буду. Обязательно буду навещать.
Может быть,
Спасибо. Не, очень красиво.
Мне приятно слышать от людей искусства. Я именно хотел, чтобы она была здесь. У меня очень много.
один случай рублей дарил. И никогда сам не понимает вещи.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Oleg.
Once we had prepared all that we could, it was time to be tourists. Friends of Misha and Galina, Irina and Vitaly Sidorenko, had flown in from Riga, Latvia, for the celebration, and like them, knew the city well and spoke the language. So we had 4 perfect tour guides. Galina Stepanova began the celebration events by hosting a reception for Misha and Oleg. The Peter Art Gallery was established to honor the works of great Russian artists which had been scattered around the world during the occupation. The formal announcement of the gift of the sculpture was made by Natalia and Oleg. Misha and Mark spoke to the gathering of officials, donors, and those who had come to see the performances. Backstage, walking among the young musicians who were preparing and tuning up for the concert, my eyes were opened to see the span of the 150 unbroken years of the conservatory, bestowing beauty and culture on the world of music and ballet, through its dedication to the highest standards of instruction and learning by the administrators, the teachers, and the students. These young people, among whom I walked backstage at the conservatory, are this generation's and the future's maestros, virtuosos, and world-renowned composers.
живет и пахнет в России как нигде лучше, чем в Америке. Но в Америке тоже неплохо она работает. Вот. Но тем не менее итог уже есть. Я тебя поздравляю. Да. И мы говорим о том, что у нас это только начало нашего сотрудничества. У нас впереди очень много идей.
Oh, yes, sure. And is your camera, can I make a... Через полгода будем все живы и здоровы.
Swan Lake in bronze was home, now and far into the unforeseeable future, to honor and inspire all the teachers and students dedicated to the arts of music and dance. There is a natural connection between music and moving images when their rhythms flow through time and harmony. By allowing the music and the images to speak to each other, suggest feelings and concepts to each other, and shape each other, something more grows from that dialogue, often unexpected and delightful. Swan Lake as ballet has been interpreted differently and successfully by many directors and choreographers, which gave us the impetus to interpret it once more, this time as a film of a work of art that pays homage to the music, the dance, and all the arts it has inspired. Perhaps Peter Tchaikovsky would be pleased that another dimension has been added, and a new audience finds a new way to experience its beauty. If I have any regrets, it is only that the camera separates the photographer from direct experience. So someday I shall revisit the conservatory and merely sit in the audience and enjoy the performance of Swan Lake.
Нашей синагоги.